everyone, myself Dr. M. Lakshmi Prasad, working as an associate professor in the Department of Data Science and Institute of Aeronautical Engineering, Hyderabad. In this video, I'm going to discuss about how we're going to model the data visualization. So, it should become under the concept of principles of data science. So before going to see that, so what is the data first of all? So it is nothing but the set of values recorded on one or more observational units. So that is nothing but an object or maybe person, etc. So what is the different types of data? Normally we are going to see that is qualitative, quantitative, discrete, continuous, primary, secondary, nominal, and ordinal. So these are some of the different types of data. So already I covered in detail explanation of all these data types in previous videos. So very first thing is that so the data is nothing but the set of values recorded on one or more observational units. So first thing should be it may be an object or it may be a person, whatever it is. And once that going to select any particular kind of object, so this object is going to see that so what should be comes under what type of data it is. So very first thing should be it may be a qualitative or it may be a discrete or it may be primary or it may be nominal and ordinal. So like this we have to be see it whether it may be comes under which kind of data it is. And next one, so qualitative data. So very first thing is that qualitative. So qualitative is also called as enumeration data, and it should represent the particular quantity, quality or attribute, and there should not be any kind of notion of magnitude or size of characteristics, so as they cannot be measured and expressed as numbers without unit of measurement. So example, we're going to see how religion, sex, blood groups, and etc. So the qualitative data, which is also called as enumeration data, which is going to represent the particular quality or attribute, right? And there is no such a kind of notion of magnitude or the size of the characteristic as they cannot be measured and expressed as numbers without the unit of measurements. And quantitative data, so it should be also called as measurement data, and these data have magnitude and also expressed as a number with and without unit of measurement. So example, height in centimeters, hemoglobin percentage, BP in Hg, and weight in kgs. So these and all will be the different types of data representation, and they should be of qualitative and quantitative mainly. So the comparison is that the qualitative data should be enumeration data, and the quantitative data should be measurement one. So we should have no measurements, should be considered as qualitative, but it is going to have some measurements here. Okay, and so it represents the quality, and there should not be any kind of magnitude and size of characteristic that can be measured. So example may be religion, so whether it may be Hindu, Muslim, and sex should be male or female, and blood group like A plus, B plus, and D. No, there should not be have any kind of measurements here. And from the qualitative, so we should have some measurements. Suppose if I'm going to take height of the person, should measure in centimeters, and hemoglobin should be going to measure GM percent, BP should be in the form of Hg, and weight in kgs like that. And next one is the discrete and continuous data. So discrete means so here always get a whole number. Example, number of beds in the hospital and number of malaria cases like that. And continuous means it cannot it can take any value possible to measure or possibility of getting fraction. So example, hemoglobin level, height, and weight. Okay, so discrete and continuous means so here I'm going to get some whole number. So example, maybe number of beds in hospital, malaria cases. And continuous means it can take any value possible to measure or possibility of getting fractions, so example HB level and height and weight. So the quantitative and qualitative. So if I'm going to consider the quantitative, so it should be HB level and height in centimeters, BP in hemoglobin and AQ squares. And qualitative means non-anemic, or it may be a tall or short, and it should be height and hyperextensive, and it may be idiot, genius, or normal, like that. Okay, so these are the some of the discrete and continuous data where it should be differentiate here. So the discrete and continuous means here we can able to get a whole number here normally for discrete data. So like a number quantity, like so number of beds and number of malaria cases, whereas the continuous means so it should be going to vary the data with respect to time, which should be in the form of fractions itself. And next one is primary and secondary data. So primary means here we can able to obtain directly from individual, which gives the precise information, whereas the secondary means obtained from the outsource. So that means the data obtained from hospital records and census. So primary data means which is going to be obtained directly from an individual and should be able to use the precise information, whereas secondary means it should be obtained from the outside source, example the data which is going to be get from the hospital records and census, like that. So the primary means where you can able to extract directly from the person individually and going to get the precise information, whereas when in secondary data it should not be not like that. So normally this one is going to get from the hospital records. And so the nominal and ordinal data, so here the nominal data means the information or data that is going to be fit into one or more categories. So but the categories cannot be ordered on one above other, like color of eyes, race, and then sex. Whereas the ordinal means, so here the categories can be ordered, but the space or class interval between the two categories may not be same, so ranking in the class or exam. Okay, so primary means so where the data is going to be directly get from individual should be the primary one, whereas the secondary means which should be obtained from the secondary sources, that should be considered as the secondary one. And so nominal means, so here the information is going to fit into one of the categories, so that may be uh, order one above the other, like color of eyes we're going to take, or race or sex, like that. And the ordinal means here the categories can be ordered like first rank, second rank, and third rank, like that. And this also be a class interval is going to be considered while considering this ordinal data, and it not be same, so like ranking in the class or exam, like. Then collection of data. So the collection of data means here the data is going to be collected very carefully. So since the data gathering is good, so there may be a chance of getting missing data. So the problems that may come, and then wrong data and insufficient data. So these are the some of the problems may come while collecting the data. So the data may be missed, or I can able to get some wrong data, and the data sometimes may not be sufficient for the particular kind of applications. And the units of measurement should also be defined very clearly. Suppose if the person height is going to measure in kgs, and it should be entirely wrong, and weight should be in centimeters, it should be wrong, right? So this type of errors should not be come. So the units of measurement should also be clearly defined, and we should also record correct one and the complete and then clear and sufficiently concise, and should be organized in a manner that it should be easy to comprehend. Okay, so whatever the record, that should be correct one. So incorrect should not be considered, and complete data set we have to get. So incomplete should not be there. So complete means suppose I'm going to take some 7 rows are defined. So in that 7 rows, all the data should become. So otherwise, it should not be getting only 4 and rest of this is not obtained. This should also be considered it. And the clear, so clear understanding of the data and the measurements, and that to be organized in the organized manner. That should be arranged in the organized manner. So normally the collected data should be accurate. So just know what I said. So measure true value of what is under study. That is the thing you have to be considered. And the valid one, that means measures only what is supposed to be measured. And precise means it should be able to give adequate details of measurement. And reliable, it should be dependable. So the collected data should be accurate. That means that we should measure the true value of what is under study. Valid means measures only what is supposed to measure. And precise in the sense it should able to give adequate details of measurement. And reliable means it should be dependable. So what are the main objectives of classification? So the data what is classified, that should be clearly understood and should be able to represents the fact in simpler form. Okay, and it should also facilitate the comparison and should also help for further statistical methods such as average, depression, etc. And it should also detect the error easily. So the objective of classification means what is the data we are taken, so that should be organized so that each and every person is clearly understood what is that each and every classified data, and it should also be present in simpler form. Okay, and we should also, so that what can able to do that is so can able to compare the comparison very quickly, and it should also helpful for the statistical treatment such as average, depression, etc. And it should also detect the error easily. Classification of the data. So here, so the process of arranging the primary data in a definite pattern and presenting it in a systematic way, and the crude data obtained from the experiment or survey is classified according to their properties, and classification done by either qualitatively or quantitatively. So whatever the classification of the data is considered, so the process of arranging that primary data in definite pattern presenting in a systematic way, right? So that should be the classification of data. And the crude data obtained from the experiments or survey is also classified according to their properties, and the classification done by either qualitatively and then quantitatively, right? So these are the classification techniques. So the classification means once the data is going to be classified, so either it may be concentrate on qualitative one or it may be qualitative one. So there are different types of classification. Let it be qualitative and quantitative, just like I said. So if I'm going to take this qualitative classification, so here it may be of geographical classification, chronological classification, and qualitative classification. And when it comes to quantitative classification, it should be discrete classification and continuous classification. So here, these are some of the different types of classifications what can I can able to done under the qualitative and quantitative. So qualitative means it should be geographical. So what is the data gathered from geographical features, that should be called as a geographical classification. And chronological classification means so once the data is obtained, so it have to be arranged in such that it should be in chronological order. And qualitative classification, so that is the other type of classification. And quantitative means it should be of discrete thing or it may be continuous. So discrete means we're able to measure like a number of malaria cases in terms of counter, you can consider as a discrete one. And for the continuous classification, so where the data is going to be classified with respect to time with the different by considering the separate features. So the qualitative classification, let's take the geographical one. So here the data is going to be classified by the location of occurrence, like be area, or it may be a region, or it may be cat rate points district wise, like that. So here the geographical thing means that, so here it should be of different types of location, area, region, cat rate. And chronological classification means, so here the data is going to be classified by the time of occurrence of observation events, and the categories are going to be arranged in chronological order, like number of Trakoma points recorded from 2000 to 2010. Okay, so chronological in the sense, so where the data is going to be classified by the time of occurrence of observational events, and geographical means where it should be classified based on the location of occurrence, like area, region, cat rate. And here chronological classification means here the data is going to be classified by the time of occurrence of observations. So with respect to time of events, so what is the data have to be considered and have to be arranged in such a way. So the categories also going to be arranged in chronological order. So number of Trakoma points from 2010. So 2010 how many it is, and 2001 how many it is, and like this I can able to do up to 2030 how many Trakoma points are recorded from year wise. It should be of chronological order. So 2000, 2001, and so on 2010. And qualitative classification, so here the classification should be according to the attributes. So like where the data is going to be classified according to some of the quality, like religion, literature, sex and occupancy. And simple classification means, so the classification is to be made in two classes, such as classification by male or female. And only manifold classification means more than two attributes are studied simultaneously. So the classification according to sex and marital status, and then again gain literacy. So these are the two types of classification. So simple one should be uh, classification by male, like male or female, simple one. So it should be of two classes. Manifold means it should be more than two or more than two attributes are going to be studied simultaneously. So like according to the sex and age, marital status, if I'm going to consider married, unmarried, or widow, so more than two it is considered. Again literacy, so the literacy rate should be moderate, low, high, like this. More than two, right? So that kind of thing should be considered as a manifold classification. Okay, so the qualitative classification means, so here it should be done in the form of attributes. So like uh, where the classification should be based on the quality, so religion, literacy, sex and occupation. And suppose if I'm going to take occupation, so it may be a doctor, or it may be employed person, or unemployed, or government employee. So here what will happen, so the quality is going to be considered according to this. And simple classification means, so where the data is going to be classified simply in two classes, like sex, male and female, like that. And manifold, so more than two is going to be considered. And tabulation, so tabulation means the process of systematic arrangement and recording of long series of data for further analysis and interpretation into two or more columns. So that should be tabulation. And it should be concise, logical, and orderly arrangement of data in the form of rows and columns. uh, like suppose if I'm going to consider this characteristics male and female. So what is the population of male, population of female, and percentage? So normally whatever the data are getting, so that should be get in the form of text. So normally that one is going to be represented in the form of a table of rows and columns, so that you can able to clearly understand instead of studying the paragraph and all. So the process of systematic organization and recording of long series of data for further analysis and interpretation into two and rows columns. So it means that it should be very concise, logical, and orderly management data into rows and columns. Okay, so like frequency distribution table for the qualitative, like male, female, and height of number of students like 6, 15, and 12 and 8. Let it be up to 4 inches, 4.5 number of students. In between 4.5 to 4.8 how many, and between 4.8 511 how many, and 6.2 6.5 how many, like this. So like this we have to be arrange it so that you can able to clearly understood the data instead of getting uh, in the form of a textual. So what are the usefulness of this tabulation? So here it represents the overall view of findings in a simpler way, and it should also identify the trends, and it should also be displayed. So next is that usefulness of tabulation. So it presents the overall view of findings in a simpler way, and it should also identify the trends and displays the information in a comparable way between the parts of findings, and it should also conserves space and reduces the explanatory and descriptive statements to be minimum, and it should also facilitates the process of comparison and also provides a basis for various statistical computations. Okay, so here what I'm going to say that is, so useful of tabulation means so we can able to find view findings in simpler way. That is the one of the best advantage of tabulation, and you can also identify the trends of that, and displays the relationship in a comparable way between the parts of the findings, and should also converse space and reduces the explanatory and descriptive statements to be minimum, and should also facilitate the process of comparison, and it should also provide the basis for various statistical computations. And next one is that graphical representation. So here the graphs are going to be used to understand the data easily. So what is the graph if I want to represent it for the text? Okay. So once the text is then definitely I have to be shown in the form of a table. So from the table only I can able to represent it. Or I can able to show in this fashion also, but it should anyway that should be the process should be this one. So this single picture is a worth of 1,000 words, goes as common saying, and non-statistical mind people can also be understand the data and compare them. And most common graphs and charts, pie charts in qualitative study and histogram in a quantitative study. So that means the graphs are going to be helpful to understand the data, and then single picture worth 1,000 words, and non-statistical minded people can also be easily understand the data and compare them. And most common graphs and bar chart will be in the form of quantitative study. So what are the advantages of this graphical representation? So for that it should be easier to read, and it should also shows the relationship between two or more set of observations, and universally applicable, and has high communication power, simplifies the complex data, and has a more lasting effect on brain. So the graphical brain representation means it should be easier to read, and should also shows the relationship between two or more set of observations, and universally applicable, and should have high communication power and simplifies the complex data and has more lasting effect on brain. And these are the some of the graphical representations of the data. So presentation of qualitative data. So if I'm going to consider the qualitative data, so what kind of graph I have to be suggest? So for that I have to go for the bar diagram is the best thing. So since it should be consist of equally spaced vertical and horizontal rectangle bars of equal width going to be placed on a common horizontal baseline. So here the categories are going to be placed on x-axis and the frequency should be on y-axis. Okay, so for the qualitative data, so the very first thing should be bar chart. So where in this bar chart we are going to take rectangles distribution, which should be placed in horizontal and vertical x-axis and y-axis. So normally the categories are going to be placed on x-axis and the frequencies are going to be placed on y-axis. So these are some of the different types of graphical representation of data, like simple bar, composite bar, and multiple bar. So in simple bar, if I'm going to consider, so it should be of different categories, and there should be frequencies like the number of students uh, pursuing a different degrees like MBBS, pharmacy, like that. And multiple bars means so within this how many number of boys and how many number of boys I want to know. So then it should becomes uh, multiple bar diagram. It should be looks like this. And composite bar means so where they should be matches with the 100%, and within this I can able to propose it. Let it be here three colors are going to maintain like four colors like blue, yellow, red, and green. It should be a different composition. So, but all the height of the all the bar should be equal to the 100. How much of composition I can able to represent within the single bar? Okay. Suppose let us take this. So within the example, if I take a bar of like this, so how many number of boys, how many number of girls, and how many others are going to be studying at the degree. Like this, I can make the comparison. That should be the composite bar diagram. And next one is the pie chart. So it should be a circular diagram, which means that it should be divided into different segments, what we call this. And each segment is going to represent the frequency of the category. Okay. So here what I'm going to say that there should be of different segments here, and each of the segment is going to show the different frequency of the category. So that means here what I'm going to say, so the blue color is going to indicate the cat rate and uncorrected refractive how much it is, and coral opacity how much it is, diametric glucose like this. So how to construct this means, so initially you have to construct a circle. So by making use of protractor I can able to know these values. So based on that I can able to plate it, and each and everything should be called as a segment of the pie diagram. So these are the other modeling the graph presentation. So like pictogram, line chart, and then cartogram. So pictogram means so instead of showing the bars, lines, dots like this, I can able to show. Suppose I want to know how many number of people are going to be staying. Indian people are going to be staying France, Italy, Spain, Germany, and Portugal. So boys I want to show. So instead of that, I'm going to represent each and every picture of that persons or male and female. So Italy how many, Spain how many. So each one is going to be indicate the 10 people. So 10. So how many? 10, 10, 3, 4, 5. So 50 people are going to be, Indian people are going to be staying in France. So similarly here 60 people. Here should be 30, and here it should be 9, 90. and it should be 20. Like this, I can able to present the pictures in the form of pictogram. And next one is line diagram. So here the line diagram means what I'm going to say here. Initially, I have to make the points of that. Normally, I'm going to show like cricket matches. So the number of scores done by India score and then Pakistan score I want to show. So let it be India score. So this kind of line diagrams mostly going to be seen in cricket matches. So over by over I want to show it. So how many number of score done by India and Pakistan, like this I can able to show. And next one should be cartogram. So it should be graph of world map. It should be one of the best example of this. And next one should be a presentation of quantitative data. So till now what I said should be the qualitative one. So now I'm going to say what should be the presentation of quantitative data. So for that I'm going to use the histogram here. So histogram means it should be a graphical representation of set of continuously drawn bars and most popular graph for the continuous variable. So the difference between the histogram bar diagram should be there should not be space in between the bar to bar in bar chart, but here it should not be any space between the bar to bar. Then it should be considered as the histogram. Okay. So if there is a space between bar to bar, then it should be a bar chart. If there is no space between bar to bar, then it should be considered as a histogram. So these are some other ways of representing this quantitative diagram, right? So frequency polygon. So frequency polygon is going to be obtained from the histogram. So by joining all the midpoint of the rectangles of the histogram. So once you join this, then you can able to obtain the histogram. And next one, frequency curve. So here you can able to see that. So you can able to obtain the frequency. And next one, scatter plot. So here instead of showing the lines and bars, I can able to show the dots and the linear curve by drawing that. So how many number of points that may be lie above the line and below the line. So negative correlation, positive correlation, like this I can able to clearly identify that. And time plot is the other kind of graphical representation for the qualitative data. So here, okay, so this should be the different ways of representing that. So apart from that, we are going to have some graphical representation like stem leaf graph and then box and whisker plot. So in stem and leaf graph means, so here by taking the values and by taking 689 and 782 and 800, like this if I'm good. So the initial first leading digit should be considered as stem and leaf 1 and 2 should be considered as the leaves. Okay, that should be under way of that. And box and whisker plot is the other kind of diagram that can able to show the represent for quantitative data. Okay, so these are the some of the different ways of modeling the visualization. So for that qualitative, I'm going to say it should be bar diagram, and these are the some of the different types of bar like simple bar, composite bar, and multiple bar. And pie chart also going to support that. And these are the other kind of presentation for representing the qualitative data like pictogram, line diagram, and cartogram. Similarly, if I'm going for quantitative, so like here I can able to show as histogram. So the difference between histogram bar chart should be there should be no spaces, then it should be a histogram, otherwise should be a bar chart. And these are the some other types of graphs where it can able to show for the quantitative data. Let it be histogram, frequency polygon, frequency curve, and caster plot, and then so stem leaf graph and box and whisker plot also other kind of presenting the qualitative data. Thank you.
Like, share and subscribe. Hit the bell icon for more updates.